Hello guys, so in our today video we are going to demonstrate how to distill ethylene glycol from liquid car coolant. What I have here is 1 liter of liquid car coolant which I purchased from my local automotive store. As you can see it is like a dark green, I don't know, it is dark green or blue in color. Yes, this is 1 liter. Yes. You can be able to distill ethylene glycol from any commercial liquid car coolant. Although the concentration of ethylene glycol in some of the liquid car coolants do vary, it depends with the manufacturer brand and the climatic condition which car coolant was intended to be used. But at least on most of the car coolant, it should contain like 50 to 70% of the ethylene glycol. Yes. So let's take off the cap and pour our car coolant into our round bottom flask. I normally prefer to distill into batches, so I think I'm going to pour half of it. This will help me effectively distill the liquid. Okay, so we have already poured our liquid car coolant into our round bottom flask. As you can see, and everything is connected. The condenser, the thermometer, and the heating meter is already switched on. So we are ready to get started. So as you can see, everything has started to boil and the temperature reads around 100 C on our thermometer. So at this temperature, we should start to receive water at first. As you can see in our flask, the water has already started to drip in. So this collected water is going to be the first batch of our distillants before we proceed into other temperatures. So this is 100 mils water which is collected as a distillant, and we are going to pour it into this PET bottle which have labeled it as a EGW, which stands for ethylene glycol water. So we're going to pour that water inside this bottle. Remember, this water comes from the 500 mils of liquid car coolant which we boil around 100 C. So guys, we are proceeding to another temperatures, and I think this should be around 100 C up to 150 C. From these temperatures, we should start to collect another distillants, and I think this is going to be a bunch of water and some other contaminants like dyed colors and corrosion inhibitors. So from our second batch of distillant, we have collected around 140 or 150, and we are going to pour it on this HDPE bottle which you have labeled it EG2, which stands for ethylene glycol 2. So we are taking off the cap and pour our collected distillants. Yes, I think this is around 130, something like that. Yes, as you can see, it is some sort of like greenish in color. slowly we're pulling it off. Okay guys, so we are proceeding. Now we are moving to another temperature ranges, and this should be around 150 C up to 180 C. At these temperatures is where we should start to collect our ethylene glycol. And I hope you can see in our flask, the ethylene glycol has already started to drip in as our third batch of our distillants. So I hope you can read the temperatures from the thermometer. It's around 180 C. Okay, so here we have our third batch of distillants that we have collected from the temperatures around 150 up to 180 C, which we believe it should be our ethylene glycol. So we are going to pour it into another flask and measure the amount of the distillants that we have collected. And I think this is around 130 mils. Yeah. And we are collecting these distillants from the 5 mils of car coolant that we previously pour into our round bottom flask. So we are going to store our ethylene glycol distillant into this HDPE bottle, which we have labeled it as EG1. So we are taking off the cap and pour our distillants. Yes. So guys, from this last bottle of HDPE, which we have labeled it as a EGR, which stands for ethylene glycol residue, we are going to pour the residue of the car coolant that remains in our round bottom flask after having multiple rounds of distillation. So we are going to take off the entire thing. We are going to disconnect everything and take off the residue inside of our round bottom flask. As you can see, it is very dark in color, very dark green. Yes. So we are going to pour this one inside this flask and measure the amount of the residue that we have remained with. And I think this is around 100 mils. Yeah. Yes, this is around 100 mils. Yes. This remains from the 5 mils of the car coolant that we pour before in our round bottom flask. Yes. Okay guys, so what we have here is bottles of distillants that we have collected from the multiple rounds of distillings. So the first bottle, the PET bottle, which you have labeled it as a EGW, stand for ethylene glycol water, which contain the water that we have distilled from the car coolants around temperature 100 C. The second bottle, which we have labeled it as a EG2, it's a bottle that we have stored the distillants that we have collected around 100 up to 150 C. And our third bottle, which we have labeled it as a EG1, which contain the distillants that we obtained from 150 up to 180 C, which we believe it contains our ethylene glycol. And the last bottle, which we have labeled it as a EGR, this contains the residue of the glycol that remains in our round bottom flask after multiple rounds of distillation. I hope you can see it is very dark in color. So those are the bottles of the batches that we have collected from the multiple rounds of distillations. And the collected ethylene glycol is going to be purified and used in another video on how to make ethylene chlorohydrate inside the lab. So guys, please subscribe in order to see another video. Thank you.